is the Eggnormous Burrito from Burger King. McDonald's burritos are like a quarter of this size. And as a fat man, I'm offended. It's alright. I'm going to be eating throughout this video because I just got home from work. It's 7:30 a.m. And I'm hungry. What's up, you guys? My name is Fatboy Down, and welcome back to another video. So what's my video on today? It is not a review of the Eggnormous Burrito from Burger King, like I made it seem. Although, like I just said, I'm going to keep fucking eating it, because I don't give a shit. This video is about the misconceptions of gun control. It's a pretty serious video to be doing while I'm eating. There's some misconceptions on the right and the left as far as I can observe. I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but in my own personal life, this is what I've noticed when speaking on the debate about gun control. I'm going to do my best to be unbiased. I won't give my opinion. It's basically the what most people think is that the right side, conservative side, Republicans, NRA, whatever you want to call them, they don't want any control at all. They just want guns to be for everybody. You can own a bazooka, you can own a fucking mine. That's not a gun, but you get my point. That's like how a lot of left people view it, as far as I can see it. In the right, they review it, they see the left side of things as the left doesn't want you to have guns at all. They want you to be defenseless, and fuck you, you're gonna die because I don't want you to have a gun. That's how I've noticed a lot of people view the left. So before I tell you what I think of all of that shit, not my personal opinion, but what I've noticed when talking to these people about these things. First, I'm going to go through the history of the Second Amendment, just a short, really condensed down version of the history. So first, Second Amendment right, quote, or says, quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Before it was written, when England first started colonizing the Americas, militias up in Northern America, the United States, you know, the 13 original colonies, militias were formed as a form of policing and protecting while people were colonizing America. Because, I mean, while there were English troops here, there weren't that many, and they couldn't watch over 13 different states and protect the people from attacks from other countries, attacks from American Indian tribes, or Native Americans, whatever the fuck you want to call them. Protect them from that. They didn't have that, so militias were formed. Militias basically were made up of people between, like, men specifically, between the ages of 18 and 45. I hope you can hear this. And these men usually had to provide their own guns. And basically, this is what was there to protect the colonies, what was there to protect the citizens, what was there to police people. That's what they had. And this is a quote from of an author called Chuck Doherty. It's an excerpt from his book, "The Minutemen, the National Guard, and the Private Militia Movement. Will the Real Militia Please Stand Up?" I think that's a reference to an Eminem song. And quote, "The experiences of the Revolutionary War had instilled most Americans with distrust of standing armies. Many concluded that a standing army was the tool of an absolutist government, and that the militia was the proper means for free people to defend themselves against such a regime, or to defend against such a regime." I butchered that. So basically that was saying that the militia was there to protect against them. It was to protect against totalitarian type governments, so like monarchies and dictatorships where one person had all the power. It was to protect against that. It was to protect the people's rights, etc. So after the Revolutionary War, the government put the militias in charge of national defense and other things like that. There was no standing army. It was just the individual state militias. And then two groups formed, two political groups, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So the Federalists wanted a strong government, and the Anti-Federalists didn't. Federalists wanted government to control a lot of individual aspects, simplify it a lot, and the Anti-Federalists felt that would more drive towards a totalitarian government, such as, like I said, a monarchy or a dictatorship. The Anti-Federalists wanted to separate the militia from the government due to fears that the government would either neglect national security and not really arm the militia very well, or that the government would start using the militia to create a totalitarian government, start taking over lives, start hurting people. So the Anti-Federalists wanted to keep the militia separate, and that was what it was originally for. It was separate from England before we were the United States. They were there to protect the people and the individual states, and not they would come together for the whole country, but they were mainly there to protect people and the states. So long story short, the Federalists got their way. The militia became run by the U.S. government, and today, what was then the militia is now known as the National Guard. So that's a short history lesson on the right to bear arms, on what had happened, how it worked. So basically, there are a couple different arguments against gun control. I guess there are endless arguments against gun control, but I wanted to highlight some of the important ones. Basically, some people spout that there should be no partial restrictions on a fundamental right. So basically, they're saying that there shouldn't be restrictions on who can own a gun, what can you do with a gun. And oftentimes they quote Thomas Jefferson, and he was talking about the First Amendment when he says this, but some people think it should apply to all of them. It says, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost." Again, he specifically talks about the freedom of the press, but a lot of people think that should apply to every single one because he's not talking about, he's talking about limiting freedoms. So that's one argument. Another one is guns can prevent mass shootings and homicides because because guns are the great equalizer. If you have somebody coming at you with a gun, you two are equal if you too have a gun. It does not matter if that person is a 450-pound bodybuilder and you are a 80-pound child. If the child has a gun and you have a gun, and they're the same type of gun, you're pretty equal. This is a quote from financialworld.com. Start quote, "Moreover, the scope of one individual's fundamental rights should not be narrowed because another individual may use those rights to inflict harm on himself or herself." Basically, that's saying that they acknowledge that there's an issue with guns being a way of suicide, but we should not restrict everybody else's right to bear arms just because some people are going to commit suicide with a gun. Another argument that I didn't really include in my paper here because I have it all laid out in front of me because I like to prepare for things. Oh, hey, I have a burrito. Another argument on the topic of allowing guns, even with suicide rates, is that when somebody decides to commit suicide, they're going to do it no matter what. A gun is just a quicker way to do it. So even if you remove guns from that aspect, they're still going to commit suicide. At this point in the video, I want to remind you that none of this is I'm claiming is my opinion. None of this is my opinion right now. This is all just research I've gotten and piled up for this video. Another point is that assault weapons are used to combat enemies, foreign and domestic. That can mean intruders, foreign invaders, the government themselves, like I mentioned what the militia was originally for. And basically the argument is a pistol is not going to be enough to stop a trained soldier from coming in your house. You have a much better shot at stopping a trained person that's trying to harm you if you have an assault rifle or something like that. And the last argument that I really wanted to point out was that gun control would create a bigger black market. If we took away guns, if we limited what you could do with guns, it would create a bigger black market because criminals who can't get guns legally, some will go to the black market to get guns. I'm not saying all will. I'm sure You know what? I'm getting my opinion. I won't. Now I want to highlight some of the arguments for gun control, just to be unbiased and let you know how it is. Basically, one of the arguments is that the Second Amendment specifically mentions a militia and that it wasn't meant for individuals. People for gun control also point out that when the Second Amendment was written, they're talking about muskets that you had to sit there and take like 20 seconds to reload one bullet at a time, not AR-15s or AK-47s, guns where you can just keep pulling the trigger and shooting round after round. Another one is that it would lower gun homicides and suicide rates, which makes sense. If you don't provide the gun, then they can't commit these acts of murder or suicide with a gun. Another one is that assault weapons are not necessary for self-defense. Like if you're walking on a street and some guy tries to mug you, you don't need to pull out an AR-15 to shoot him. A regular pistol will just do. And another one is it should be harder for dangerous people to gain control of guns. Meaning a lot of people want more background checks, a longer waiting period, more mental health checks, etc., etc. So basically, the Second Amendment was specifically meant for a militia, but the militias were made up of individual gun owners. If you were part of the militia before, during, and shortly after the Revolutionary War, you were expected to provide your own gun. The government didn't give you a gun. Originally, a militia was to protect the nation from foreign governments and our own government if it became too tyrannical. But the meaning changed when the government took the militia. The government took the militia and made it under government control, so we lost a big defense against our own government that we had originally. So the modern meaning really does transfer to individuals that use guns for personal protection. My personal opinion on... How should I phrase this? Not my personal opinion on gun control, but how people view gun control, is that most people, whether you're from the left or the right, agree in common sense gun laws. They agree with tighter restrictions on guns. Most people agree that you should have more and stricter background checks. So more background checks, a longer waiting period, and more mental health evaluations. I'm not very educated in how the mental health evaluations go for buying a gun. I am aware that they're not as strict as they could be. They can always be stricter, and they should be stricter. I think most people agree that there should be multiple mental health checks from multiple different doctors. Basically what I'm saying is the media wants the right to think that the left wants us to get rid of guns altogether, and the media wants the left to think that the right wants to allow all guns with no restrictions, which it just isn't true at all. The media is brainwashing you. I hate to agree with Donald Trump, but fake news is a thing. It's not as big as he makes it seem, but it is a thing. They are trying to brainwash you. They try to persuade you. Conservatives are right. Liberals in Hollywood do try to persuade you. I'd like to point out that I don't agree with them, that I think that's wrong. If you have a platform to make a political statement, make a fucking political statement. Majority of you are moderate Americans, even if you identify with the left or right. The media makes it seem that there's no middle ground, there's no centrist view, there's no moderates. There's either far left or far right, and if you're not far left, you're far right. If you're not far right, you're far left. I've been classified as radical liberal. I've been classified as radical conservative. I've been classified as a moderate. I think I'm a moderate. But most Americans believe in common sense gun laws, like I just outlined. I said I was going to try to be unbiased. I know I was a little biased. I think it's impossible for me to not be unbiased, since I'm a one-man crew doing my own research and videos on everything. Even so, you don't have to agree with me, and that's what there's a comment section for. So if you don't agree with me, if you agree with me, if you want me to cover something, please comment. I always love feedback. I love hearing feedback about my videos, about my opinions. I think this is going to be a running series where I just give my opinion or my thoughts on things. I got good responses to my last Shia LaDouche video, so I think I'm going to continue with this. I'm not going to eat as often, although even if you guys didn't like this, go to Burger King and try the Eggnormous Burrito. It's pretty fucking good. And I'm not sponsored. I'm a broke-ass 19-year-old kid. So Burger King, if you want to sponsor me with my 94 subscribers, please do. Well, that does it for this video. My name is Fatboy Down. Like, share, definitely comment, and definitely subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.